2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us. Today's episode is a rapid fire Q&A with Tyler. Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
What's going on, you guys? Tyler here. I'm recording by myself. Brannon is out with a family trip right now, hopefully in the mountains where he has zero technology. He's able to just enjoy his time with his family. And I'm here doing a couple of episodes on my own today. So I thought today, one of the things that we would want to do is we frequently get questions that are submitted in writing instead of by callers coming on the show, and we're backlogged on a lot of those questions. And so I thought I'd hit several of those today with you. So the topic is going to kind of range all over the place, but we'll hit several different questions, maybe 4 or 5, 6 questions today that are going to be a smattering of things that have been submitted by you, our listeners, that we haven't ever really gotten to because we push callers to the top when we have callers that are willing to come on the show. So today we're going to try to catch a few of those. If you're interested, you can go to therapybros.com and you can submit your questions there. You can also go there and sign up to become a caller on the show. And we're always happy to have a real conversation with real people, because it's the real people that come on our show that actually make our show, I think, as good as it is, because there's real vulnerability happening. And we know that vulnerability builds connection, and it really helps people. So today we're just going to go through several questions. I'm just going to read the question. I'll give a quick answer. It's always a little bit tricky with these because there's usually a whole bunch of context underneath the question that we're not allowed to know because it's just submitted in writing. So I'll try to answer as straight as I can with my understanding of the question, knowing that if you submitted this question, you may have other context behind that I don't know about. So we're going to start here with the first one. This question is about trickle truth. And it says, my husband of 25 years had 2 emotional affairs with family and friends and a 2-year emotional sexual affair with a coworker. After discovering the sexual affair, I eventually found out he has also had a porn addiction for the last 15 years. My first D-Day was in June 2021. For over a year after that, he was still in contact with his mistress and telling me that he was pretty sure he wanted a divorce and saying and doing extremely hurtful things. He has since come out of the fog, figured out his values, closed the door with her, and is committed to healing and recovery. It has been almost 2-year Trickle truth disclosure process. As he moves up the layers of honesty, he remembers more things he lied about or just didn't share that he should have. My question is, when, if ever, will the Trickle truth end? Is there a way to know if and when he has been completely honest about everything? I live every day with an underlying anxiety about if and when the next bomb will drop. A really, really common question. This is a difficult question to answer because there's a lot of it depends. But there's a few things that you can look for. The first thing is that I think you're seeing some things in a nuanced way, which is a good thing right now, because usually it's all or nothing. And so when you said that he moves up the layers of honesty, that is a common thing that happens with somebody who actually starts to work recovery, is they usually don't disclose a lot because they're trying to self-protect their shameful parts of themselves. But then they finally start to break it open, and then oftentimes it starts to trickle through with different things. It's not the most ideal by any means. It's definitely hard on the relationship. It's definitely hard on the person receiving these constant like trickle out disclosures. That's why we prefer to do a full disclosure process. And that's the first thing that I would say to you is, Teresa, is that if you haven't already done it, you and your husband should consider just going through with the full disclosure process, where there can be some structure, there can be some support on both sides, there can be an opportunity for your husband to actually put together, his whole body of work, so to speak. There is always going to be maybe a few things that still bubble up once in a while because it's been buried by denial or something else, but at least there's this big kind of full, at least as full as we can get at disclosure that happens. And oftentimes anything that comes after that is stuff that's more in the same realm of things that have already been disclosed. And then those things aren't quite as big of a deal. If he's willing to do that. Now, it's interesting because in your question, you're also saying that he's changing and yet he's still not being fully honest. There's a difference between not remembering something and then having it come back. Like this happens a lot when guys come to group with me, where someone else shares part of their disclosure in group, and then another guy goes, "Oh no, I forgot this, thing or whatever. What do I do with that?" So that does happen sometimes. That's the layers of honesty, I think, part of it that you're talking about. But if there's open hiding, there's still more work to do in the realm of building trust, of him stepping into his masculinity. And that's partly why you're going to have the feelings that you have that you're feeling confused about. Whereas if you see and you feel in other areas of life this effort, this willingness, this humility towards transparency and honesty and a continued willingness to do the right work, that feeling will shine through, even though maybe all of the details haven't yet been found or exposed yet. So you'll feel the difference more than you'll know the difference. If you're waking up in the morning and you're having a relationship where it's not going to be perfect, but where you see real effort happening, your partner isn't because you're making him, but he's doing whatever work would be there. He's going to have targets that he's working on in his own life. Even if they've grown out of sobriety and into something else, he's going to be holding himself accountable for things. He's going to be building support for himself to get empathy and accountability from other people other than you. He's going to be practicing things like empathy inside the relationship and perspective taking. And you'll feel the energy of the effort, the energy of humility, which is knowing your power and your weaknesses and being willing to admit and accept all of them. And then you'll see and feel honesty and transparency in other parts of life too, even the day-to-day kind of stuff. And if you start to feel those things and you see the things going along with the effort, that's going to be one way to start saying, okay, like we're on the right track here. I know that with some couples that I work with disclosure types of things, once they've had the big disclosure happen, many of them feel like if something else comes to awareness, if it falls under the categories of what they've already disclosed, then it might be a real quick disclosure about that and added to the categories, or sometimes they don't even feel like it needs to be spoken again because it's already been spoken to a sponsor or group or something else. And if it's something that's totally brand new, then that needs to be disclosed in the relationship in terms of the patterns and themes of things. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Teresa. I know that that's a little bit difficult because it actually is very, you can't actually have a list of the facts that would say this is 100% honest now. You have to be doing the work on your own side of things to be trusting your feelings and your gut again, which I know is really difficult after it's been ripped out of you through the betrayal process. So hopefully that's helpful for you there. We're going to go to the next one. This one is from James. And James says, I am in the 1 down position. Is there possibly a lower number like the 5 down or the 50 down position? How do I get out? I've been in recovery for 2.5 years. I feel pretty dang sober, but I feel worse about myself than I've ever felt. No confidence in my ability to make choices or decisions whatsoever. Betrayal trauma 100, James 0. Feeling about ready to blow it all up. And then in parentheses, it says, the simple fact that I'm asking this question proves that I'm not being empathetic, that I am self-focused and self-pitying and not looking at things with my significant other in mind. All right, James, thanks for submitting the question. There's a couple of parts to this question that I want to get into with you. The first one is that the parentheses part first. You're probably right, James, that you're actually probably contributing to your own suffering because you're so stuck in being the victim. And when you're the victim, you can't be empathetic by nature. It's difficult to be empathetic. It does put you in a self-focused place, which then leads to actually more misery. The self-pitying leads to more misery. And then not looking at other things with your significant other in mind. That's probably true. And I get it. It's probably coming from a place that's born of your pain and feeling marginalized, feeling judged from your partner over the years. It's an interesting kind of a place to be, but you're not doing yourself any favors by staying in that spot. And that's probably one reason why I'm hearing the exasperation in your question. I'm hearing that, when you say you're about ready to blow the whole thing up, I don't blame you for feeling that way. I would just caution you to make sure that if you're going to blow the whole thing up, that you do it from a place of groundedness and peace and confidence and conviction rather than exasperation or anger or resentment or pettiness. And I think you know that. That's why you reached out here. There's something inside of you that knows that. So let's talk about the first part of your question, which is being in the 1 down position. This is really, really common. I see it so much in my practice. And by nature, it almost feels like it has to be this way at the beginning. So the typical pattern is that maybe even before D-Day happens, the pattern is already established that one or the other person is in the one up or 1 down position. Couples often end up in the 1 up and 1 down position. What that means is that one person feels like they have less of a voice than the other person. Sometimes both people kind of feel that way, but oftentimes there's one person that has a little bit less of a strong personality, or they don't like conflict a little bit less than their partner does. And so they often concede in everything in the relationship. And as they start to concede, there's a couple of things that happen. As they concede all the time, in order to keep the peace all the time, which is actually a great trait. It's a great skill to have. It's a great set of tools that people actually learn in therapy to learn how to keep the peace. But oftentimes, in an effort to keep the peace, the person who is going into the 1 down position ends up losing. The price they pay is their sense of self. oftentimes they lose their values, and oftentimes they end up in a place of resentment. And that resentful place takes away the ability for that partner to then be connected in the relationship, because they won't be vulnerable. And because they won't be vulnerable and they're not being authentic, they can't be transparent. There's no room for connection in the relationship. Right? So there's no way the relationship will hit a wall. And the same is true for the person in the one-up position. Usually the person in the one-up position either just has a different personality that's okay with a little bit more conflict, or is a little bit more opinionated, but oftentimes it's also a way that a person who's been hurt in the relationship tries to hold on to safety in the relationship. And so you can see, James, with your question, if you've been the betrayer in the equation here, you've done some things that have actually hurt your relationship, probably hurt your wife significantly, and in doing so, you've been hurting yourself too. That's the nature of these things. It would make sense that she would be in a place where, in order to try to stay in the relationship and to stay safe in her mind, she would go into the one-up position where it means you don't have a say in things. Your opinion doesn't matter as much. She's in charge. She makes all the decisions. And it's very likely, I would bet, that even she starts to resent you, because what she really wants deep down inside is an equal partner. And now she's doing some things that don't even allow you to be that, at least in your mind. And so you're stuck in this endless cycle of one up, one down. And the relationship becomes more oriented towards power and control instead of connection. And a power and control relationship, you'll hit barriers all the time, and you will not be able to have the levels of connection that you want to have in your deepest, closest relationships. It takes risk and vulnerability to place each other as equals in the relationship, who are both individuals who have strengths and weaknesses, and to trust that we're both committed to working on things. And that's where a connection-driven relationship goes, and that's where the deepest levels of intimacy and connection reside in relationships. So, to your question, James, this is tricky, because part of the answer is that maybe without even knowing it, you have made choices to put yourself in the one-down position, which also means that you have the ability to make different choices now that you're conscious of it, now that you're aware of it. And so what you have to do is you have to start getting back to the basics of looking at your values as a person. And then you need to line out your values and start developing boundaries around those values inside of your relationship, not in an effort to make a power play, but in an effort to start showing up as an equal in your relationship. Oftentimes the pendulum starts to swing, and a guy goes and, reads No More Mr. Nice Guy or something. And he's like, oh, I need to start having a voice now, and I need to start standing up. And then he pendulum swings up over the top of his partner, and he's still playing the same game of the power and control, rather than actually just getting to know himself. And as he comes to know himself, as he wrestles with God and gets his identity from a bigger, higher source than even his wife, he can now show up as an authentic person, inviting the kind of relationship that both of you want, rather than just playing the game and jumping over the top of your partner and now putting her in a one-down position. And then you guys start this game of leapfrog that only ends in pain and suffering and resentment and exasperation, similar to the place that it sounds like you are in writing down this question. So I would suggest, James, that you have a good team of other men in your life who will provide you a couple of things. One is they'll provide you with understanding and empathy, while at the same time helping you to see your side of things, helping you to get back in touch with the best parts of yourself, and helping you to start making decisions from those places of the best parts of yourself as you try to manage your relationship. There's absolutely hope here for change, but it's going to take all of that work, letting go of resentments, letting go of your own regrets, stepping into the truth of who you are, setting boundaries in your relationship and knowing that it probably won't go well because the pattern will be breaking, and that'll be scary for your wife, but it's for the sake of a better relationship for both of you. You're actually, if you go in and start setting the boundaries, not just for yourself, but for the one that you love, because you know what you're doing right now isn't working, that's where the heart's at peace, and that's where you're most likely to be most successful at, one, inviting change in the relationship, and two, not losing yourself. Because when you lose yourself, you've got nothing left to give. So hopefully that's helpful for you, James. Good luck to you. You're not alone there. I know for sure that you're not alone there. So thanks for sending in that question. This next question is an interesting question. It comes from Gwen, and it says, I love the podcast on May 10th. I've been bucked off the same darn horse for years now. My husband is in the mid stages of dementia, and I'm struggling with the commitment to care for him versus getting back on a horse that bucks me off every time. I'm wondering if you can help. So Gwen, first, I just want to say that I just want to acknowledge that being the partner of someone who's struggling with dementia in and of itself is extremely, extremely difficult. It's gut-wrenching. It's like going through the grieving process of losing someone over and over and over again. And I just want to acknowledge that process can feel crushing sometimes. But we have a grandmother who struggled with dementia and Alzheimer's for several years. We're talking 15 years. And watching the stress that it placed on the family, and feeling just that crushing loss of the grandmother that we had, and seeing her sort of disintegrate was soul crushing. So I just want to acknowledge that for you. This is a tricky one, Gwen, because if I'm reading this right, what's happening is that you're getting mistreated by a person who doesn't even always remember that they've been doing the mistreating. You've been in a committed relationship with a person, married to them, probably committed to them till death do you part. And now you're stuck in this rock and a hard place of, I don't want to be mistreated. I don't want to continually be abused. I want to be treated with respect in my relationship. I can see the writing on the wall that it's probably not always going to happen with my partner who's got dementia. At the same time, I feel conflicted because I have deep down at my core some values that really matter to me, like doing the hard thing, staying because I'm committed, being loyal, fidelity in marriage and in relationships, commitment. And I've made commitments and I want to stay in my marriage at the same time that you're doing all the grieving over all of this. And so it makes sense that you're feeling a little bit conflicted. I don't know the answer to your question, Gwen, but there's a few principles that I would maybe suggest. One is, and I'm sure you're already doing this, I would suggest that you have and build, number one, a support team for yourself. A place where you can go and have the structure hold you back up when you're feeling beat down, when you're feeling not good enough, when you're feeling worn out, when you're feeling resentful, when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling sad, tired. If you don't have a support system, those things go deeper and further and you suffer more and you lose more. But if you have a support system, they act there as almost like the scaffoldings on a building that's being built. And those people can hear what you're going through. A good team member will hold with you what you're going through. And they'll be not only a landing spot, but they'll also be someone who helps to provide that backbone that you need to stay true to what the person you want to be. So that's the first thing. The second thing I might suggest, and this is just more of a logistical thing, is that you create ways and space for you not to do all of the caregiving by yourself, whether that's making sure he spends some time in a day program a little bit so you can have some time for some self-care, whether that's having family members or other friends take some shifts now and again to just give you some space and time away so that you're not totally crushed all of the time under the weight of it all by yourself. Creating space and time away and allowing yourself to have some time for rejuvenation will be also, I think, really, really important. And then the third thing, Gwen, that I would just maybe suggest is that you consider just doing a little exercise where you sit down and write down or get, there's a lot of ways to do this, but write down what your core values are, or you can go and you can get online and order something called the values deck, and it'll actually walk you through identifying your top values in life. And then after you've got those values written down, you can kind of organize them for your situation as to which ones feel most important, and then make some conscious choices on your part as to how you're going to manage and protect those values in your life. And it'll at least hopefully give you a sense that you're making choices, that you do have some power in the relationship, and that you're doing some trade-offs against those values with each other, but you have the ability to make those choices. And sometimes just knowing that you're making choices and that you always do have some level of choice, even though the situation, you can't necessarily change this, it alleviates suffering right away. So that's my suggestion for you. Again, Gwen, my heart is with you, and I wish you the very, very best. So let's get to another one here. This one is about trust. We kind of touched on this a little bit. This one comes from Marianne. It says, I am 4 years out from D-Day. I've made a lot of progress in healing. It's been a long and tortured journey. Due to financial dependency, my husband and I are still together. He wants to forget and move on. I just can't. I don't trust him. Physically and intellectually, I think I do. Spiritually, emotionally, and intimately, I do not, with caps. Does that make sense? I need help. What are your thoughts? Yeah, Marianne, I actually like where you're already starting to go here, that you are looking at trust in a much more open view than most people do, especially when there's been some pain or some trauma. So most people, let's just talk a little bit about trust for a second. Most people, they do all or nothing with trust, where it's like, we get our trust broken and now I can't trust you at all. You're not trustworthy anymore. I'm going to cast you aside, or I'm going to shut you down. I'm going to shut you out. But the truth is that there's a lot of different elements and layers to trust. And you've kind of broken them down into physically, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, and intimately. And you're saying that in those levels, you actually trust your husband physically and intellectually. You just don't trust him spiritually, emotionally, and intimately. I would say, if I'm looking at that list with my own value system, the spiritual, emotional, and intimate ones probably have a little bit more weight in terms of the safety in the relationship than maybe the other ones do. But there's a lot of other elements to trust that you can kind of look at, and I think it's great that you're actually looking at them in a nuanced kind of a way. So the first thing that I would just say before I give any other part of an answer here, or any other thoughts, is that you for sure should follow your gut feeling, not your like panicky anxiety feeling that's up in your chest, but your gut feeling about whether or not there's actual recovery happening here. If you've seen effort, if you've felt genuineness from him, if you're getting elements of work towards accountability and empathy, then that gut feeling is likely to tell you that you should stick around and hang on. If you're not getting that, your gut feeling might be telling you to do something different based off of the fact that things aren't actually moving in the right direction. And I don't know your situation here, so I'm just kind of saying you got to follow your gut first. Now, what I would say with trust is this is something that can be helpful. This comes from Brene Brown. We've talked about it in other podcast episodes, but she breaks trust into an acronym called BRAVING, and I'll just go through them. And this is a good, I think this is a good way to open up discussion and dialogue and actually have specifics to talk about in the context of trust rather than just all or nothing of trust. So the first one is do I trust, am I trustworthy, and do I trust my partner to live with healthy boundaries? That's B. And this is for me to do an inventory on myself. At the same time, I'm looking at where is it strong or weak, and maybe I do a scale of 0 to 10, or you can give a grading system or whatever you want to do as you kind of go through this. But does my partner have good boundaries and set good boundaries? Do I actually set healthy boundaries? Give yourself, give your partner kind of a grade there, and then maybe that's where you guys have a discussion. The next one is reliability. Next one is reliability. Reliability is my partner reliable? Do I kind of know what to expect from my partner because it's consistent, you know? Not that it's always a good thing, you know, if my partner is consistently 30 minutes late getting home from work, that's not something I actually like. And they're eroding trust if they say they're going to be home at a certain time and then don't get home at a certain time, but they're reliable. It happens every day that they're 30 minutes late getting home from work. So you can at least trust that they're going to be reliable in those kinds of patterns, right? So that's one level of trust. Or on the positive side of things, of course, they're reliable, where it sounds like that's maybe what you were putting there, like intellectually, there's probably some reliability there in your question that you submitted. So am I reliable? And so that's the R. The A is accountability. Am I willing to take accountability for my actions, my choices, my part of helping things go right? And do I see my partner taking accountability for the same things? The V is what Brene Brown calls the vault. The vault is, do I have the capability of holding in confidence the things people share with me without spreading it and getting gossipy or spreading those things around? And does my partner have the same? You know, and if I look at like my relationship, I would say that my wife would probably give me with just our own personalized, because a lot of you guys hear so much about our life and my own vulnerable stories out on the internet and all of that she would say my vault is not very good. Her vault is amazing. I'd give her an A+ on her vault. She'd probably give me like a C-, and I might be being generous on that, at least in parts of our lives, right? So I is integrity, and integrity is the ability to hold shape under pressure, meaning, do you live your values? Are you congruent with who you say you are? And is your partner the same? So if they're professing certain values but not living those values, and that's going to be hard to trust, and that's going to be another aspect of what you can discuss in your relationships. So integrity, and then we've got non-judgment. N is non-judgment. Can we discuss things with one another? Can we see one another with eyes of non-judgment? Meaning, we're not assigning right and wrongs. We're not assigning good and bads. We're not assigning labels and values on each other. We're trying to just get in the same space and see one another as two human beings. And then the last one, G, for the braving acronym, is to be generous. And what Brene Brown, I think, means by that is that when you jump to conclusions and make assumptions, most of us always jump to the conclusions of the worst case scenario. And instead, we should find the most generous thing we possibly can and then check it out with our partner. And if I have something happen in my relationship, does my partner meet me with generosity? And when that happens, it builds trust in the relationship. And when it doesn't, it actually continues to decrease the trust in the relationship. So generosity is a really difficult skill, but it's a really valuable one for rebuilding trust. So hopefully that's helpful. I'd encourage you to open up discussion on a broader, more specific level about those areas of trust that either you have listed or that we talked about here, and let it be a work in progress if it's working and if there is progress. But if there's not work and if there's not progress, then you're also getting a different set of information and may need to make a different set of choices. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Marianne. Let's do another one here. This one is from Melanie. She says, "Hi, have you guys already done a podcast about the unstable, insecure, and untrusting environment that is created by all the crazy-making behaviors coming from the betrayer that then pushes the betrayed into a state of chaos, fear, and control? I can't stop listening to your podcast. Thank you for all that you bring to light too." All right, Melanie. Yeah, let's talk about that. We probably don't often talk about this side of things a whole lot on our podcast because if you listen to several of our episodes, Brannon and I tend to lean towards trying to move away from being stuck and placed in a victim role. I know there's a difference between being victimized and playing the victim role, but we tend to lean a little bit towards the accountability of the choice that every person has, even if they've been victimized, towards reclaiming their life and towards making their own choices and creating the life that they were designed for. So we probably haven't talked about it in a while, but you bring up a really good question. And maybe I'll just go through something that's just some information for you as our listeners that's really common knowledge in the world of this recovery. And it's the idea of what we call the fear and the fear or the trauma cycle. And so what ends up happening is that for a lot of times, a lot of people who have been in a spot of they're being betrayed, maybe even before they know they're being betrayed, they feel something is wrong. They'll feel a sense of instability in the relationship. They'll feel like they're hitting a wall in the relationship, on their connection. Something's off. But then when they find out, when D-Day happens, when there's a disclosure or discovery, then it sort of throws everything into chaos. It elicits a whole bunch of fear in the relationship. It sometimes even brings out elements of like classic trauma that you'd see: can't sleep, problems eating, hypervigilant, you can't stop the heart from beating, bad dreams, flashbacks, all sorts of stuff sometimes happens for partners. At a bare minimum, there's a whole bunch of fear, and it sets things in motion on this massive roller coaster of emotions. And the betrayed partner will often report that they feel almost crazy, like they don't know up from down. They don't know what else they don't know. They don't know what they can trust. And because the relationship is supposed to be the safest place we have in our relationships, this is the person we're supposed to trust the most. It feels threatening to the body system the same way that the body's like, uh-oh, like I'm in danger, because we're wired for connection and attachment. And when that threat of that broken attachment is there, it's really scary. So oftentimes what happens is that the body and the brain, in an effort to try to get things back in order, to make sense of it, to try to find and grasp for safety, it moves into obsession, and the brain won't shut off. The brain and the body won't shut off. And it's like, what else don't I know? What else should I do? What else should I see? What else, how else can I manage to get safety back? And that drains the person who's been betrayed emotionally to the point that eventually they move into the next part of the cycle, which is called control. And control goes a couple of different ways. Sometimes the betrayed partner will try to find safety by reaching over and trying to fix their partner who's betrayed them. They'll be the one to set the therapy appointments. They'll be the one to start sending podcast episodes, or they'll go take all of their devices away, or put rules on it, or they'll check up on them, or they'll drive by their work every day, all sorts of stuff like that. And what they think they're doing is trying to provide safety for themselves and their partner, but what they're ending up doing is just actually using whatever limited energy emotionally they have on something that they really ultimately don't have control over anyway. And then they often end up feeling shameful. They end up feeling tired and resentful and burned out. And then they're still in the same pain, but now they've used whatever energy they had on something that didn't yield a result. The other way that control goes is it goes inside, and they go into themselves and say, well, why am I not good enough? If I just did this better, if we were just that, if we had sex more, if the house was cleaner, if we didn't fight as much, what's wrong with me? And they'll go into like these controlling behaviors in themselves, judgmental thoughts about themselves. And then of course that leads to its own pain and shame. And then that pain and shame rolls back to the top of the cycle again: fear of disconnection, exasperation, emotional tiredness, instability. And then of course the cycle kicks itself off. And what ends up happening is we end up chasing safety and security in a way that it never actually produces it for us. And then we're just more and more tired and worn out too. So that's the cycle I think that you're alluding to with the question. It's a really normal thing. It's almost like a basic thing that anybody's going to kind of fall into when there's been some big breach of trust inside of a really committed relationship. It's the natural and normal thing, but when you understand it, you can then learn to start to break it. And we probably need to do a whole episode at some point on this cycle and how to break it. But in essence, in order to break it, you have to identify it first. You have to meet yourself with understanding and compassion. You want to build a team of people who can help you to identify it and break it. And then you're going to start moving back towards your own ideas and values and setting healthy boundaries again. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Melanie. Let's do one more. We're about out of time here, but we'll do one more here. This one says, I have a topic for you. Janelle, this is from Janelle. I have a topic for you. I am more than willing to do a call if it's preferred, but my topic is this. After 2 years of trying to heal our marriage, I feel like I'm still holding back. I don't want to trust my partner, even though he is doing the work and trying to connect with me. I feel myself holding back in fear that if I let go and try to connect in our marriage, things will somehow go back to the way they were and my pain won't matter anymore. I hate that this happens. I don't know how to let go of that fear and take steps towards trusting and being open again. All right, Janelle, another classic question that we get all the time. This is again another tricky one because if your partner is not actually working recovery, you don't necessarily need to be leaning back in again. But it sounds like in your situation, you're feeling pretty confident that your partner is actually doing the work. You see the work happening. And this is something that happens a lot with my clients, where I'll be working with someone for a while, maybe a betrayed partner, and she'll come into a meeting and say, hey, I know my partner's in recovery. I feel it. I know it. I see it happening. I'm really grateful for it, but it's also really scary for me. And it almost makes me want to leave the relationship, or it makes me want to drop out of therapy because I'm scared. And we get down to the bottom of the fear. And the fear is, I know that I need to lean myself back in, but I'm really afraid that I'm going to get burned again. And then your question, you also said, I'm afraid also that somehow the pain that I've experienced isn't going to be valid anymore. And without meaning to, I see this happen a lot, where the pain needing to be seen as valid over the course of a long period of time actually becomes a stumbling block to the progress of the individual who's holding on to the pain and to the relationship. It's this need to be seen. It's this need to be right. And I know I'm saying that in kind of a different way that doesn't sound empathetic, because the truth is that it is valid. Your pain is valid. You've been through hell. And the hard step is to actually convince yourself that, in your situation where your husband's actually in recovery, to convince yourself that the best step is to let go of it and and to not need to be seen that way anymore. It's like sometimes it's a different version of the same thing that happens with other couples a lot, where many of us would rather be right than effective, because our pride gets in the way, because it's a safety thing, because of something else, and we need to be right rather than be effective. And the work is to actually come back around to what's going to be effective. Just as the first layer. And then the second deeper layer is that I can see and know that there's going to be fear, because what you're contemplating doing is stepping back into a place where there's no guarantees, where you finally climbed out of this hole that you were thrown in. You're able to breathe. You're able to see again. You're able to kind of even function in the relationship at a certain level, and you've created some level of safety there. And now the next step means you have to go back out into the wilderness. You got to step off the edge of the cliff, so to speak, again, and learn to fly again, knowing that you can't control those outcomes, knowing that you could get burned again. And so one way to help that with that is on the personal side that you have control over, is to continue to grow in an understanding of who you are, to continue to grow in your confidence as a person, and also competence in your skills to manage stress, to manage painful emotions, to trust yourself. And the more you grow into trusting yourself, the easier it will become to take the risk, even though it will never be fully easy. And you can do that a little at a time. You can jump in, dip your toes, and you can pull back out for a little while. But eventually leaning yourself all the way back in is the pathway towards having everything that you want in your relationship. And if you've got a track record with a partner who's showing that they're fully committed, that they're doing the work, that the energy is right in that relationship, the pathway forward is through that vulnerability. So, good luck to you, Janelle. Thank you. Hopefully, you guys, this is helpful. We have a whole bunch of other questions that I still didn't even get to today, but I thought we'd try to at least put a dent in it. Love to hear anything that comes up for you with anything that I've said or any of the questions that we've talked about. If you relate to any of these, love to have some discussion about that. If it spurs anything inside of you and you want to have your own discussion, by all means, you're welcome to please, submit a question and come on the show and have an actual discussion too, because those are also always really rich. So thank you guys, and hope you guys have a good week.